Welcome everybody to the Autism and Entertainment webinar. I'm really excited about today's webinar because it's featuring our latest educational partner, GameU, and you'll learn a little bit more about them. And it's going to feature Adam Coleman, and he's going to share his experience of becoming a video game developer. For those who haven't been to an autism and entertainment activity, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about us. So we are a work group that is focused on helping increase employment for autistic talent in the entertainment space. And we do that through expanding the concept of diversity to include neurodiversity by making sure that people see the autism brand. You know, people often look to hire people on the spectrum. So we want that same attitude as they evaluate hiring talent in entertainment related jobs. We also work with the businesses and let them know about the resources and organizations that are out there. And we want to give you the knowledge and the tools you need to navigate your own career. Now, in the bottom corner, I just wanted to share with you that if you visit the autismandentertainment.org website, you're going to see a new option, which is shop. And if you click on that, you can be directed to our online store where we have all sorts of merchandise with the Autism and Entertainment logo and the wonderful logo that was designed by Jorge Gutierrez. So I invite you to attend. Now I wanted to invite my good friend, where are you, Lachlan? Lachlan James, who is with GameU, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about GameU and then on with Adam's presentation. Hi, Lachlan.
Hey, Judy, and thanks for that really warm welcome. Fantastic to be here, and hello to everyone on the call as well. As one of Autism in Entertainment's new education partners, we at GameU are very excited to have the opportunity to talk with all of you on the call today. We've been passionate advocates for inclusion in technology-based learning and industries, as well as specialist providers of coding, computer, and digital design programs for over 10 years now. And whilst we teach students of all ages and abilities, GameU's primary focus is on empowering people with autism to learn in-demand skills that today's digital economy and specifically that the video game development industry require. Today, we'll cover a lot of territory, focusing on what it takes to forge a career in the video game industry. I'll quickly outline how and why GameU courses are built by industry experts, aligned to real-world workplace needs, and designed from the ground up with neurologically diverse learners in mind. I'll introduce you to one of GameU's stars and game development veteran, Adam Coleman, who will share his experiences and insights gleaned from working in some of the industry's most notable video game development companies like Bioware and EA Games. He'll share how he transformed a passion for gaming into a career in game development, what it's actually like working for game development companies, and the differences to consider between large enterprises and between small indie studios. He'll outline ways to help promote your work and build a portfolio. He'll talk about the skills that matter and align with workplace demand. And he'll then pull these discussion points together by showing all of us how to build a game live in front of our eyes. We'll then have a dedicated Q&A at the end of the webinar. We'll put your questions to Adam. So, as Judy said, please use the chat function to type any questions that come to mind, and we'll address those at the end of today's presentation. So my name's Lachlan, and I'm just going to walk you through a couple of quick slides about GameU. So GameU was born out of a casual conversation that our founder, Michael Cowas, had in his kitchen. An avid video game designer, he wanted a fun way to transform his kids' love of gaming into valuable STEAM skills. And with curriculums crafted and taught by professional game developers, GameU courses harness that love of gaming, tailoring it to each student's unique learning needs to turn video game consumers into video game creators. In terms of our purpose, GameU is the premium provider of online courses that teach video game creation with a social mission to facilitate inclusivity in video game design. And we do this by empowering individuals of all abilities, including those with special needs, to learn the skills needed to succeed in the video game industry. And we truly believe that the path to better social inclusion and workforce participation is through equipping people in this community with in-demand technical skills. It's this belief that led us to partner with Autism in Entertainment. And in fact, we formally announced that partnership in a media release just yesterday. And as you'd expect, I think our founder and CEO sums it up best in that announcement when he says, GameU is focused on equipping students, including those with special needs, with the skills to thrive in today's and tomorrow's digital economy. AIE's belief that individuals on the autism spectrum can forge strong careers in entertainment-related fields, including game design, means our missions are well aligned. So we are genuinely excited to work alongside Autism in Entertainment to help build career pathways in STEM-based fields for those in our community on the spectrum. So quickly, what makes GameU suited to neurodiverse learners? Well, firstly, there's that word unique that I keep talking about. GameU's All Abilities program is meticulously designed to meet the unique needs of neurodiverse learners. Course delivery and curriculum is tailored to the individual goals of each learner in consultation with the students themselves, as well as families and even case managers as appropriate. We're well practiced at this. GameU's HCBS aligned curriculum has taught over 2,500 neurodiverse students valuable coding, computer, and digital design skills. And we're accessible too. GameU is an allowable service under many self-direction and traditional Medicaid waivers. We already work with states and families throughout the US in this regard, including in California, where Autism in Entertainment is headquartered. And lastly, our outcomes-based approach delivers benefits in 3 key ways. GameU's coding and computer courses build problem-solving and critical thinking capabilities that boost student independence, helping to prepare you for the workforce. Welcoming settings and collaborative learning environments foster cooperation on projects, idea sharing, and community building. And that project-based learning model helps apply knowledge in practical scenarios to reinforce skill development. But ultimately, the biggest point of difference we offer for any learner is that direct link to industry. GameU instructors are professionals in their field. We have over 100 working game developers on staff. And because they know what it takes, they also know which skills matter. So we teach the tools and concepts that industry actually demands. And because but it doesn't just apply to straight game development and coding either. There's much more than that. It's the associated skills too, like 3D modeling, animation, graphic artwork, and many more. In fact, we offer over 220 course modules in total. But that's almost enough out of me. As a reminder, if you'd like to see if GameU might be right for you, you can take advantage of our free introductory class offer that we're doing as part of today's session. There are contact details on the screen here, and we'll also be in touch after the webinar too, where you can indicate your interest if you haven't already, but I know many of you on today's session already have. So now I'm going to turn you over to Adam and Nick. Adam's worked on the likes of Darkness Falls, Spellbinder, and Star Wars: The Old Republic, while Nick used to be a GameU student who's now employed as a GameU instructor. So, gentlemen, it's game on. Over to you.
Thank you, Lachlan. Hey, everybody, how are we doing today?
Hello.
Oh, so thank you again for the introduction. Again, my name is Adam Coleman. I'm going to give you a little bit about my background. Again, I worked in the game industry for about 15 years. And I started with a company called Mythic Entertainment, right? And eventually Mythic got bought out by EA, eventually became EA Bioware, right? We're gonna talk about how the industry works a little bit like that as well. I have worked on games like Dark Age of Camelot, Warhammer Online, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Star Wars Online. I know some of those are pretty old probably, but at least hopefully everyone knows Star Wars. I wanna talk to you a little bit about my journey. How did I get here, right? How did I get here? I was an avid gamer. I was a consumer. I love video games, right? And it didn't stop there, right? I didn't want to just play games. I wanted to become involved in that process, right? I started very simply by participating in those communities, right? Going to message boards, always giving feedback, reading the latest news, providing feedback, bug reports, things of that nature, right? I wanted to make sure that my name was out there, that I was seen by these companies that I loved and followed, had a passion for, right? And it turned out, I would apply. Every time there's a job opening, I had those skills. I really wanted to be part of that community that made these games, the things that I loved. I would apply and I would apply and I would apply, right? And I'd get turned down. Did not stop me, right? Don't ever give up. That's one of those things. If you're following your passion, you become invested in what you love and you work hard, you can get there, right? Eventually, one of these times, I actually got accepted for an interview. I got to sit down and I get to sit across from somebody who's a wonderful woman. She became my producer eventually. Her name was Lori Hiram. And I sat down and she had noticed all of these posts, all these bug reports, right? My involvement in the community outside. And I'm sitting across from her and I recognized something. I recognized her name and I recognized her first and her last name. I said, did you used to be Lori Silva? And now imagine her. She's probably scared. How do you know my maiden name? I knew her maiden name. And it happened to be that, I'm so passionate about the games that they made. I read the credits. And so I noticed that her first name was married with a last name, Darren Hirup. Darren Hirup was the lead engineer on a game that I really liked, and she was a producer. They got married there. So I'm not telling you that memorizing the credits to a video game is going to land you a job, right? It happened for me that I got lucky and happened to mention that, but just your involvement in those communities, right, goes a long way of showing, right? What I want to do is I'm going to hand it over to Nick for just a moment so he can tell you a little bit about his journey here with GameU.
Yes, hello everyone. I have been a student here in GameU for 6 years. A family friend told me about it. I started with 1 class a week, and over the years, that kept increasing to 4 classes a week, and I love it. I learned something new at every session, and I thought it would be a great idea to apply for GameU, for a job at GameU to teach others the skills that I have learned. I have also been playing Roblox for 8 years. I'm pretty sure you guys know Roblox or have played it. And I always wanted to record myself playing video games like how YouTubers were when I was growing up. It was always a passion of mine, and video editing is a big passion of mine. So,
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Now, let's talk about the industry itself, right? It's a job. Working in the game industry is like any other normal job. It's usually 9 to 5, right? With the exception of crunch. And we're going to get into crunch a little bit later. Everybody's probably heard of industry crunch before, right? But you're in a building with hundreds of people. You're with artists, engineers, producers, voice actors, right? And most times you're probably in a cube. You're going to have a computer in front of you. You're going to have a job to do, right? What makes it rewarding, though, is the people you work with. Like any other job at most companies, right? They exist to make money, right? And this is one of those things where it's true. In the game industry, all these companies exist. They're there to make a profit. They're there to make money, right? And you have to leverage that, right, with passion, right? So we have these people, right, myself as a developer, right? We come in and you're working side by side with people just as passionate as you are, right? And one of the cool key skills that you get to learn working in the game industry, right, is being able to convey your ideas, right? It's important to convey an idea the way it makes sense to a company, right? So one of the first skills I'm going to talk about really is how to articulate, right? How to talk about what you're passionate about. And you have to do it in such a way to a company that's going to assuage some of their concerns, right? They need to make money. They need to make money to be able to pay you, to pay for benefits, to pay for the games that we all love, right? It has to be there, right? So it's not a bad thing, right? We talk about things called ROI, return on investment. They want to know, how is this great idea that you came up with that you know people are going to love, how is that going to help us, right? Empower our employees. So I don't see it ever as a bad thing. It just adds a layer to the process, but it's a skill that you're going to want to learn, is being a way to articulate yourself, to have this great idea and then articulate how it's going to help the company as well, right? And we're talking about the industry. It is a job and there is a lot to do. normal deadlines, and crunch. I brought up crunch before, right? Crunch time is something that is notorious in the industry, and it can cause a lot of burnout, right? And burnout is, I can't do this anymore. You're pulling your hair and stuff like that, right? It's usually the months and weeks leading up to a launch of the game, right? And it can be some of the hardest. I remember spending 16 hours a day at the office, and I wouldn't go home. I actually brought a blanket and a pillow, and I would sleep under my desk, right? But that's how dedicated I was. Wake back up and crawl back over top and be like, okay, where was I? That quest. I got to go fix that quest real quick, right? So one thing I will say is that does exist. It is real in the industry. Take care of yourself, right? Take care of your well-being. Make sure you're hydrating. Make sure you're getting up. I was always told, look at the horizon. It seems like a simple, tip, but go out and look out a window and look at the horizon. Don't stare at this computer screen all day, right? The cool thing is that no matter how hard it can get, all the deadlines you have to meet, all the meetings you have to go to, right? It's an extremely rewarding experience. You're working with people just like you, like-minded, they're passionate, they love what they do. And that is one of the biggest benefits in this industry is you got a workplace that everyone is genuinely happy to be there. They want to be there, right? I'm going to turn over to Nick just a second because he can talk about what it's like having come an instructor at GameU.
Yep. Well, first of all, I've been here for a few months so far, and every instructor that I've encountered has been really nice and helpful. Everyone is a team player, and it's been a real great experience so far. But when you are teaching the students, it requires a lot of patience and bonding with the student. You also need to learn how to troubleshoot for when they encounter bugs like internet issues or game issues. Video editing and teaching are two passions of mine, and video editing and teaching are two passions of mine, so this job allows me to do both those, and I am looking forward to learning more in 2025.
Awesome. Now, let's talk about those job skills and those jobs, right? A lot of people come together to create and maintain a game, right? Just from the start, you have a bunch of writers. They're going to come together. They're going to have an idea. They're going to involve the producers. The producers are going to come together. They're going to want an outline. They're going to put a timetable together, right? What is it going to be? How is the game going to play? Is it a story? Is it an action game? Is it a scroller, right? From those roots, it takes a dedicated team, a large team of people usually, right? And they come from all walks of life. You have artists and engineers. And I'm saying these as pretty vague terms, right? When you're in the industry, it's actually a highly specialized environment. So one of the things you want to kind of look at is what is your skill and are there specialties? And do you specialize in some of these, right? Because it's going to be important. You don't just have an artist, right? If you have somebody like an artist, they can do concept art, right? They could do environmental, they could do lighting. Lighting is a big one now for, is the lighting setup right in a game, right? You have things that 3D artists that actually make the models for the game, right? Then you have something called a rigger. A rigger is someone that takes that model and puts joints and bones into it. It's kind of hard, right? So that the animator can then take it, and the animator is another artist that comes in and actually makes those joints move, right? So it's a large part, but it's a specialized kind of industry, right? So find what you're passionate about, follow that, but also try to specialize, right? Engineering, same way. So programmers usually call engineers, they're software engineers, right? My father would probably kick me because he's an actual engineer. He doesn't think software engineering is an engineering field, right? But engineering is the same way. You have network engineers, right? You have people that are doing client and server engineering. So, the server, that's where the game lives at the company. The client is that thing you download. You're getting it off Steam. You're getting it from somewhere. You're getting it from a disk. And again, I'm probably too old. We don't use disks anymore, right? But different types of engineers come together. It's just different programming languages. You have a UI engineer, that's Lua, right? If you have a client engineer, that is probably going to be, C++, right? But all of these people have to actually work together, right? And they come together, including some of the people that you wouldn't even think about, right? So social media, right? Lachlan is our, social media manager, right? He's going out there, he's making sure our brand and our messaging is right. It's on key, it's on point. You have people like Lachlan that are going to work with these game companies. Some of the people that I think are kind of the unsung heroes, QA, right? QA stands for quality assurance, right? And they are the unsung heroes, right? They play test the game. They make sure the game is working, it's balanced, it's fun, right? And a lot of people want to get into QA, right? You're telling me I can get paid to play a video game, right? It's not all fun and games. So a little bit about QA, right, is that let's say something small got changed. A letter was, you misspelled a word in a quest. Well, you're going to have to start from the very start of the game all the way up to that quest and then verify that that one letter, that little mistake got fixed, right? Another example, you could be on the corner of a pitch in soccer, right? And you might have to kick that ball 1,000 times. You just literally reset the game 1,000 times, kick that ball to make sure that that soccer ball is going to hit and go through that goal every time. It's not going to glitch out and fly somewhere, right? So a lot of people love QA, but realize these are the real dedicated people. They're willing to kick a ball 1,000 times. It's not fun anymore, right? But I've talked about my journey, a little bit of what the industry is like. I want to talk about some of the things that you can do on your own journey, no matter what stage you are in it, right? One of the first things I want to bring up is portfolios, right? Portfolios are a huge thing. Whether you're an artist, a musician, if you're an actor, an engineer, programmer, right? Showing your body of work is important, right? It's not only showing off your talents, your skills, your abilities, right? It's also showing that you can commit to a project, that you can finish it, that you have a work ethic. These are some of the things that people are going to be looking at as they look at your portfolios, right? And there's a lot of websites out there for you, depending on your specialty. There's places like ArtStation. ArtStation is a great place for artists to show off their artwork. itch.io is for more game developers and programmers, right? If you want to show off working games that they can play, right? And you want to choose one that works for you, and you want to update it regularly, right? With all the things you're working on, show off, be proud of what you can do, right? A portfolio goes a long way into helping you break in, and you can take it steps further, right? Web design. And there are a lot of web hosting services out there, right? And you do not need to be a pro to be able to do them, right? A lot of them are just click and drag. You can click and drag something that looks good, right? And with a little bit of effort and a little bit of hard work, you can make something that's very clean, very professional looking, right? And they're free, right? I'd suggest looking at hosting your portfolio, but not just your portfolio, a website about you, other projects you're working on, your interests, your hobbies, right? A lot of that. Show off who you are, right? Because it's not just about the job and the skills, right? It's also about a culture. You're trying to join a gaming culture, an industry culture, right? And one of the key things in this industry, right, is culture. Companies are going to be looking at that. They want to see that you're going to be a good fit, that you're going to work well with those other team members, right? They want to know that you're sharing the same passion as them and one another, right? That you're sharing the same interests, you're doing the same things. And it goes a long way to make sure you're a cohesive fit, right? I'm gonna use these big terms, but they're looking for a cohesive cultural fit when they're looking at things like that. And having a website and even just a blog showing off what you do, who you are, will get you a long way than somebody who just sends in a resume, right? So being a cohesive fit for them, that's a great start as well. And who is them, right? Let's talk about what is out there as far as companies, because we've got AAA and we've got indie, right? AAA is the Hollywood of the games industry, right? They're the big label names. It's EA, it's Blizzard, it's Activision, Ubisoft, you name it, right? And the reason why you know them is because their marketing manager works probably almost as hard as ours does Lachlan, right? And getting their name out there and getting that brand recognition, right? You have indie. Indie is independent, right? Oftentimes, they're smaller studios, smaller teams, sometimes even just a single person, maybe two people working on a project that they're very passionate about, right? And with each of these options, because you can choose which option you want to look for and kind of gear yourself towards, there are going to be pros and cons, right? Some of the pros with indie, more control and say in the project. And that just goes without saying, the team size is smaller, right? You're going to be doing probably multiple jobs on an indie project. You're going to have more say and more control on what's going on, right? It's also more room for experimentation, right? One of those things I said, this whole ROI and everything else like that, right, is that bigger companies kind of lock down on what you're allowed to experiment on. If everybody played a game where it's like, this just seems like the last game they made, right? And that's because they don't have the flexibility that an indie studio does have to be experimental, to innovate, to have fun with it, right? You're also gonna have tighter community engagement. Usually indie developers have a very tight following. They're going to all know each other, right? It's also a good way that if you're part of a small indie, community, right, putting your resume in there and participating in that community is going to help you get yourself aligned with a job with that indie studio. There are some cons to indie as well, though, right? Limited budget and funds, right? One of the things that the big studios can do is they can afford to say, you know what, this didn't work the way we thought, scrap it and do it again. Sometimes in indie, you might have to make it work, right? You're going to be running out of time, running out of budget. Smaller teams, it means you are going to be taking on more. I talked about having specializations like being a rigger or an animator. In indie, they might not be able to afford an animator and a rigger. So I talked about specializing, but knowing a little bit of each step is going to help you join a team like that. Also, less reach, less exposure, right? They might not have a lot of brand recognition out there, right? It's something that they're going to struggle and fight against. Now, what are the pros of AAA, right? Fiscally stable, right? Financially stable, surplus of resources usually, right? And again, we talked about the easy marketing and the brand recognition that comes with a AAA studio. You know, if there's a studio that you really like, and for me, it was my company I started with, Mythic. I know if Mythic put out a game, I'm going to buy it. I don't even have to think about it. I don't have to see a review of it. Usually, that's kind of one of the cons that come along with it, right? The other pro for this is the assigned roles and responsibilities. This is where the specializations actually come in, is they're going to hire 2 or 3 riggers or animators and stuff like that, right? Now, let's look at like the cons of AAA, right? Intense, high-paced work, right? So you're going to be getting those crunch times. You're going to be getting the 16 hours. Hopefully you can go home. It was a long drive for me. I slept under my desk, right? You're going to have less control and say in your projects, right? And that's one of those things where it takes a large team of people. In order to keep a large team of people focused on one goal, right? There's not a lot of wiggle room. You get the job, you got to put this piece in, you got to make it work, and that's it. You're going to move on to the next piece, right? So there's a little bit less creativity as well that comes with AAA, right? And layoffs. And this is a big one that, it's in the news all the time if you follow gaming news, right? Layoffs. That's how I exited the industry, right? I was finally laid off in 2011, right? One of the things about AAA, right, is after all the crunch and everything else like that, they look to then save those resources for their next project. So layoffs are going to come. It's usually 30% to 50%. It's actually kind of a frightening number, but it's okay, right? One of the things that happens culturally in the AAA is that usually when something launches, right, people usually jump off board and they find the next project that's just being started or they're going towards crunch, right? And so it's actually something that happens often. If you're looking to get into an industry that you can switch jobs, work on different projects every couple of years, right? That's usually how you make it in the AAA industry. I got lucky. I got to stay at the same place for about 15 years, which is a lot longer than most. I think about 5 is the average. You're there about 5 years. After that, look at another studio. It's something to consider because if you're not someone that likes change or likes moving around, right, you might look at an indie studio or someplace you can stay a little bit longer, right? Now, I've gone over and over on kind of the skill sets and everything else like that, the pros and cons of indie, AAA. I want to kind of start with a demo, right? I want to show you some of the things that we actually teach at GameView. We're going to do a brief little demo here today. I'm going to take some time and we're gonna learn to walk before we run. So we're going to start with a basic platform game. Show of hands. Everyone's played Mario, right? At least knows of Super Mario, right? We're going to make a really, really basic Super Mario game today. Going to be super fun. But I'm going to show you a lot of these skills that I just went over in actual practical practice here. And let me pull this up. Now, can everybody see the screen? That should be gray, right? Thumbs up. It's got a gray screen on video games. Cool. So this is something called Construct, and it is a web-based program. It is free to use. So if you want to play around with this, I encourage you, go out, have fun with this, right? We're going to use this. And it's a 2D engine. It's called an IDE. Stands for Integrated Development Environment. It's a big fancy term you don't need to remember. It just means that the art, the animation, the programming, everything is built in, right? So you can do it all one stop right here. Now, we're going to make a game. We're going to have fun with this. Let's see. We're making Mario. What do we think the first thing we need? I think the first thing we need a character. Let's make a character for this game. characters in games, especially 2D games, are called sprites, right? So we're gonna go into our 2D art, and we're gonna double click here, and we're gonna go to sprite. One of the things you want to get used to doing, especially working in the industry, is organization, right? You want to be very well organized. You want to have something called conventions. And one of the conventions we use is called a naming convention, right? So we want to name something so that at a distance, when there's 18,000 different things, right? And it can happen. Projects have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of things. If we've got all of that, we want to make sure that at a glance, I know what it is, right? So I'm going to start with something like SPR_. So it's a sprite. That's the thing I'm making. And we'll just name it player, the player of our game. So this is the sprite, the physical image of our player, right? And I'm going to go ahead and insert it here, right? Now, instead of showing you my terrible drawing skills, I did take the liberty of finding some art for our game today. Let's see here. And we're going to go ahead and import some frames from a strip. And today I have chosen Ninja Frog, right? And this is going to upload just a really quick animation. It's called an idle animation, right? So as a 2D artist, you're going to be taking these, and each of these down here is the frame, right? And it slowly changes the animation. His little arms kind of bob up and down, and his chest, his breathing, and everything else like that. So somebody, we're making a game, this was a studio, somebody would be in charge of just the idle animation. Idle is when they stand still, right? So we got our cool looking character in here. One of the other things that art might do, right? An artist might come in and actually change the collision, right? The collision point, and it's kind of hard to see, I can probably zoom in here. The collision point is where he can interact with the world. There's going to be solid objects you don't want him to bump into. Maybe there's a bug in your game that he starts to hang off a cliff for some reason, right? And it might just be because we need to smooth this collision point out, right? So artists are also going to deal with collision, where the characters can interact with in the game. But we'll get our little frog guy in here. I think he's super cute, right? We got a character. We need a place for him to live. We need a background. We need to make this look lively, right? So this is where your environmental artists and stuff will come in. We're going to add something called a tiled background, right? So it's just a texture that repeats, and artists are going to learn about repeating textures, and it's going to stretch out across the background. And I'm going to name this, it's the tiled background, right? Do level 1, right? And all it is, I'm gonna use my assets that I've got here, because we've got backgrounds. Oh, blue sounds fun today. We're gonna get a nice blue checkered background here, and we're just gonna put it in. The cool thing is, because it's tiled, this texture should, when I stretch it out, repeat over the entirety of this thing, right? And it's nice, seamless, smooth, and it looks like I lost my guy here, right? Quick way to talk about layers. Everything you see in a video game is done off of layers, right? And you want to be cognizant of what's in the background, what's in the foreground, right? So I put this background in after I put my player in. It's on top of him. He's hidden, right? So for 2D games, there's something called the Z order, how far you are away from the screen you're looking at, right? So we'll go into Z order, and we'll send to the bottom layer. There my guy goes. He pops right back out. So we got a cool little background. Right now, if I play this game, it's not going to do much. He's going to hang there and float. He's not programmed to move. He doesn't have anything working yet. Before I program to move, though, gravity is a real thing. I want something he can land on, right? Let's go ahead, and we're going to add something to this. We're going to add, let's see here. Let's add tile map. A tile map is a whole collection of objects, and this is actually one of the coolest things in game design. It's still, I'm a programmer primarily, so as an artist, seeing artists make these tile maps are amazing in the way they work. So I'm going to call this tile map main. Put our tile map on, and they give you a default one to work with. So if you wanted to work, this looks like a top-down tile map. I'm going to go back here, and let's go to my terrain, and I'm going to import this one here. So the tile map, it's everything you'd see in a video game, right? You've got little blocks you can jump on, little ponds, a little lily pad, different bricks, some different blocks that look like they're going to fall out from underneath you, a brick, right? But they all get laid out on one big texture, right? And what's neat is this becomes kind of like a palette. So if you're an artist and you have blue, and then I can clean my brush off and grab red, right? I can come in and like, I want a grass block. Now I want that pink grass block, right? So it's kind of a way of setting up a palette for your game. It also helps you keep the theme cohesive for your game. You have all the different things lined up in order the way it is there. What we want to do real quick though, because tile maps have a funny way of working if you don't set the size right. I think it is a 16 by 16. So that when I come over to my tile map here, if I want to give them someplace to live, I can click on, ooh, there we go. I'll click on my tile map. Let's grab this. And it's just like I said, a palette, but I can actually click and drag. So if I click just this much, I can put this much in, right? And put it to the tile map. If I want to click this much, let's grab our pen. And it is literally point and click to start to build the level. Now, we're not going to make it that sporadic, right? Let's actually build out a level, a little bit fun here. What's neat is that it also has a grid that it's actually snapping to, right? So it won't let me make an option that's offset by any amount, right? So we'll just make a little place for him to live, maybe a little step up here. Looking cool, right? We got our character in our game. What I want to do, though, before we run this, right, we got to make sure that our character can move around. So we've got this awesome level here. We're going to click on our character, and we're going to go to something called a behavior. Now, a behavior is going to dictate how something's going to interact with this game engine, right? So if I go to behaviors, and for him, there's two of them I want to add. I'm going to add this one. It's called scroll to. This is going to make sure the camera follows our player. He is the center of our action, right? And then we're going to add another one. I want him to be able to move, right? This is the cool thing about this engine. This engine allows you to grasp concepts of what's going on, including the programming. But it's called pictorial based. It's picture based. So you're going to be clicking and dragging pictures, even for the programming. Makes it really simple to start to build really effective games. It's a platform. I want the guy to act like he's on a platform, right? So I've got that there. I got one more thing I need to do though. This tile map that I've got right here, right? I want to add a behavior to it because right now he's got gravity. I gave him that platform behavior. He's got gravity. He'll fall down now. I want to make this solid so he's not going to fall through the tiles that I just painted there, right? And if everything has worked properly, and I'm going to hit the play button here, and I have to make sure that you guys can see it. So I'm going to stop my share for just 1 second, guys, and I'm going to come back on screen. That way you can actually see what's going on here, right? Now you're going to be able to see my whole browser and stuff. But what you can see, and can everybody actually see that? The game is up there. Give me a thumbs up. Cool, right? 5 minutes, 7 minutes. I don't know how long I've been talking and doing this, but really, really quick. I've got interesting little background, right? I've got my tile map where I can start to build my level, but I gave this guy a behavior, and very quickly, I'm off to the races. I'm moving around, right? Now, one thing that always comes up, I see a bug already. I'm that guy. I have to figure out what happened, right? He should have an animation. I don't see him moving. What happened there? And this is get used to bug fixing, see a problem, ask the question first. Why didn't that work? What's going on, right? So let's go in and look at his animation really quick. Go over here. Here's his animation. I can tell you what happened. I set it up. I didn't loop it. So I'm going to loop the animation. Let's hit the play button. Looks okay. I think we go a lot faster now. Let's try like, I don't know, 18. Let's try 18. Now when I play this, he should. Now he's just bouncing there. Happy little frog, right? Sweet. Perfect. What happens if he jumps off the ledge? Gone. Nothing, right? Brings me to my favorite part though, right? Programming. And this is why, again, I love this program. It's one of the programs, one of the first programs we actually teach at GameU. What I'm going to show you is how the programming works inside here. And it's something called an event sheet. An event in video game terms is when something happens, right? Then there's an action. The action is the thing we're going to do after this event happens, right? So what's happening right now? Frog Ninja, he's falling off the screen. So I'm going to add an event, and because it's for Frog Ninja, right? He's falling off the screen. I'm going to select him. These are all the different events that can happen to Frog Ninja right now, right? I happen to know this one right here is outside layout. The layout is your level. That whole first level you saw, that's your layout. So if Frog Ninja is outside the layout, I want to do a thing. That thing's in action. So let's add an action. And it's going to be actually for the system. I want to restart the whole game. I'm going to use the system for this one. And I'm going to find restart game. So restart layout, right? So my Frog Ninja is outside the level. Restart the level. And let's go ahead and yeet Frog Ninja off the ledge. And he comes back, right? So every time, right, there's your cause and effect, your event and your action. Now I can make Frog Ninja come back. Now I see another bug in this, right? When I move to the left, he's still facing to the right. So let's go in, let's change that, because that's going to be a little bit more programming. Again, my favorite thing to talk about. We're going to have to, let's see, add a new object to our game. So these, all the objects that I've been adding are sorted over here, right, in our project window. What I want to do is I want to add a new object because I need to have access to the keyboard, right? So now that I add the keyboard object, I have basically access to every time that there's an input on that keyboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I want to make it so that when I press the left button, so my character with that platform behavior, he already moves left and right. But when I press the left button, I want him to face to the left, right? So I'm going to add an event for the keyboard. And let's do on key pressed, right? So key is down, key pressed, and key released. These are actually kind of nitpicky, right? As soon as I press it on key pressed, it will work, right? Only if the key is held down will it work, or then when I let go of the key will it work. And that's for timing and a lot of different issues. Let's do on key pressed, click to choose, left arrow. Okay, done. So when I press the left arrow on the keyboard, I want Ninja Frog. Let's see, set mirrored actually. So they have something built into it, mirroring. You're just gonna mirror them the other direction. So I'm gonna do set mirrored and mirrored. Let's see if I fix that bug. Ninja goes to the right. He goes to the left. He's facing the left. Right? What's going to happen when I press the right button, though? Now he's stuck facing that direction. So let's go back in there. You do it once, you're probably going to have to do it twice at least, right? Or at least twice. So what you can do, you can come back in through that whole process. I'm going to cheat a little bit. A copy and a paste. And then I'll just go in and edit them to be right arrow. Set mirrored to not mirrored when I press the right arrow. Now, Frog Ninja, hopefully, there he is. And now he can even change directions in air. Perfect, right? Easy peasy, right? I've spent about 15 minutes, and in 15 minutes, right, we've got cool little background, got Frog Ninja bobbing and jumping. We got a cool little area he can go through, right? He turns left, he turns right. We can get into it. We'd add a jump animation in, right? We could add a whole bunch of other things. Let's add, just so we can see a little bit more of the engine, make this a little bit more fun. We'll add one more object here, but I'm going to add another sprite this time. I'm not going to use a tile map, and I'm going to call it sprite moving brick or something like that. I'm just going to add, this will be fun. Does anybody like Minecraft out there? Any Minecraft fans? Yes, no? I don't have a picture of a moving brick, so I'm going to make a Minecraft block real quick. This will be fun. Some brown and some green just to show off some of the art tools and stuff like that, right? And this is the cool thing, too. If you want to use your own artwork, right? Because you saw me importing pictures and stuff like that. If you want to make your own artwork, there are plenty of tools here. You are probably going to be using something like Krita or Photoshop or something like that. But they do have some built-in tools. And just, you know, I'm not an artist, but just knowing a little bit of the tools always goes a long way. So it's a little Minecraft grass block there, right? Doesn't look exactly like Minecraft, but if I were to use something like this ink dropper, and that's going to allow me to suck up that brown color I used before, so I don't have to go and search for it anymore, right? And if I just take a brush and then make it just a little bit lighter, I can start to give it that little pixelated Minecraft look, right? Use that ink dropper again, grab that green, let's go darker, right? To give it a little bit more contrast up. Oop, I used the ink dropper again. Grab a brush and just add a little bit more contrast again, right? Just to make something a little bit more detail, right? And it is gargantuan. I don't know why a Minecraft grass block will move up and down, but we're going to do that because it sounds fun today. Let's see. We've got our block here. Now, if we leave it just like that, right? Something's going to happen here. Fall right through it because we're missing our behaviors, right? How does it act in the world? Let's go back to our behaviors. We're going to make it solid. The other thing I want to do, though, I'm going to make a moving brick real quick. So I'm going to use something called sine. This is the actual scientific one for sine, right? And it's just, it stands for the oscillation of motion, right? It stands for movement and motion. But in this one, we're going to use our sine behavior. And we'll come over here and let's just make it vertical. We're going to make it go up and down, right? I don't want to get too technical, but your magnitude is how far it's going to move up and down. Each of these squares is about 32 pixels. Once you start and get into this, you start to know real quick at an eye's glance how many pixels something is. We make that like 150. And the period is how long it takes to move those 150 pixels, right? Which means the bigger the number, the slower it's actually going to move. It takes longer, right? Let's go with a 6, right? So now if I come in here, I got my weird world with the Minecraft moving grass block that we can then continue, right? But I'm going to kind of pause here, right? Because this is a good place to kind of look at it, right? What was involved in this, right? It took me maybe 15 or 20 minutes, but there had to have been an artist at some point that was going to do all the different animations. There might be a jump animation, stuff like that. There's going to be an environment artist, right? There's going to be somebody who has the overall theme of the game in mind so that they're not like me and put a Minecraft block and clearly what is a stylized game to the side here, and I put a Minecraft block in there, right? So there's going to be people looking at that kind of stuff. There's the programming that just went involved in that, right? All the different art tools and stuff. So I want to kind of just close it out here on the demo because I don't want to run out of time. I want to make sure that we have time to answer your guys' questions. I wanted to show off just kind of some of the stuff that we actually do here at GameU and some of the skills that you're going to use in that industry. And I'm going to stop my share one more time, guys, so I can get you back to the presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. That was fantastic, Nick. Really appreciate you jumping into. Judy as well for the really warm introduction there. We covered a lot of territory in a pretty short time. Thanks everyone very much. Speaking of everyone else, who's very, which is fantastic. I've seen questions coming into the chat box during the session, which is fantastic. So I think it's time we try and address some of those. And if you have some questions you're just thinking of now, please feel free to go and chuck them in there. Now's a good time to do that. So, got a few questions, lots that come through in the public chat, a few private ones as well. Cool. Let me go and grab some now. Okay, so Adam, maybe a tough one to answer, but what do you think the most important tool is that you can start learning to begin your game development journey?
Most important tool. And I know it sounds weird, but time management tool, believe it or not. I know you might be looking for like, do you want a certain, do you want Photoshop or do you want Adobe products? Do you want that? But a time management tool just to keep you on task and stuff like that is kind of important, right? And then learn the basic tools first. Like I said, the walk before the run, right? Do a 2D game before you jump into a 3D game, right? Find what the basic of that tool is going to be, even like paint, right? Before you go to Photoshop, learn how to do MS Paint on your computer first, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Got some other questions around programming languages and things. So Jason's asked one. So what type of program do you use? C++, Java, Python? I assume it probably varies a little bit, Adam, but can you talk to that a little bit?
And it varies depending on what you want to do. So each language is usually fit for what you're trying to do. So C++, and they're trying to phase it out. That's another conversation. But C++ is primarily for server code, running on the server. That's all the, all of your account info and all that stuff in the background, right? Java, JavaScript, Lua, those are they're more driven for UI, the user interface, right? Python is a really, really good language that is. Try not to be too technical. There are low-level languages, there are intermediate-level languages, and there are high-level languages. Python, Java are high-level languages, which means that they're easier to write for the programmer, and they get compiled down to machine code. So I would start with a high-level language like Python and Java if it's a question of what to start with. But what's used in the industry is C++, Java, Lua, Python. Those are primarily the ones.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Question here, just with regards to 3D modeling, would Minecraft EDU edition count as 3D modeling, Adam?
It is. So 3D modeling, yes and no. This is an interesting one. So Minecraft is technically 2.5D. And what I mean by that is it is still a 2D surfaces that have textures applied. Now, it's all brick. It's voxel-based, basically, so it's pixel-based. But you have a cube, and then you have 6 sides to it, right? Now, there are some neat things you can do in there to use alphas and make it look like it's a 3D object. For the most part, it's actually a 2.5D game. It's using different 2D sides to represent a 3D world. So it's close. It's 2.5D is where Minecraft lands.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as far as 3D modeling, I know there's a difference, and I know you're the guy to talk about it, Adam. Definitely not me. When you talk about 3D modeling, and then there's like world creating, so using Unity and things. What are the difference between those two things?
So yeah, so usually you're gonna have a 3D artist that are making your assets, right? So all of the assets. So if there's going to be a tree, there's going to be 3 different types of trees, and they might take the same model and bend it and make it look different, right? But you're going to have somebody that's making all of the assets. So all of the models, there might be somebody that textures them, that lights them and stuff like that. And then usually it's a game dev that will go in and build the world. So the world building and kind of what we did even in the demo here, right? Building the world and putting all the things in and dragging and dropping. That's usually done by a game developer. They're not necessarily an artist. They don't have to be an artist, right? And they'll have a guide of like, this is the style we're looking for. The mood is moody. We want it to be dark and thunderstormy. And they get constraints that then they can take all these cool things the artists make and put it into the game and design the level. That's usually level design or a designer or a developer that does that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. What else do we have here? I suspect there were a couple of people that might have joined in and out of the session as you were talking. I guess there's a question here from David about the pros of AAA, working for AAA game design studios. I know you covered some of that, but I guess we talked about some of the things that could be stressful with that, but I guess just succinctly, because people sometimes focus on the cons and the stress, succinctly, why is that a good avenue for people to consider?
So the pros of AAA, it is so, and one of the cons is layoffs, but the pro of it is stability. There is time and budget and money, right? You can specialize and do that one thing that you're very good at, right? So you don't have to be a jack of all trades like I was to make that cute little demo in that game, right? You can specialize and work in the thing that you like to work on, right? And the pro is that you're working with a lot of people that are supportive, helpful. They're just as passionate as you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. Okay, a few people have asked this, so I'll cover this off now. Is the session being recorded, and how can I get it? Yes, it absolutely is being recorded. Basically, everyone who's registered for today's session is going to get a copy of that sent out to them as a follow-up. And then we'll also include as part of that follow-up, if you haven't already indicated your interest, as part of that follow-up, there'll be a link to that recording, and you can also indicate if you're interested in one of those free introductory Game U classes as well, if you haven't already said that. So they'll kind of all get bundled into one thing, if that makes sense. So hopefully we'll make that as easy for everyone as possible. What else? That's a good question. Adam, what is a deal breaker for recruiters when you're going through the interview hiring process? I assume there's probably a few things to consider, but what comes to mind?
Yeah. The deal breaker kind of goes back to one of the slides I was talking about, the cultural fit, right? Showing off who you are, that you're just as passionate, right? That your interests and your skills and your hobbies, right, align with that company. They're looking, the deal breaker, if you're not a cultural fit, and it sounds really weird, but if you are an avid golfer and you love all the golf games, and you're trying to work on like a first-person shooter or something like that, right? Might be a little bit of a deal breaker because there's a bit of a cultural divide there. And so usually it's cultural fit. That's gonna be a big thing. Are you what we're looking for? Are you as excited about the genre as we are about our game?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, there's a question here. I touched on this slightly in my intro, but appreciate people rolling in, so I'll cover this off again. There's another, is GameU an allowable service under Medicaid waiver guidelines? The shorter answer is for everyone, yes, that's true. So we're HCBS aligned or home and community based services aligned, which means that if you're a Medicaid beneficiary, that support can often be used for GameU courses. And we already work with people across a number of different states throughout the US, but including California. So the short answer is, if that's of interest to you, we can definitely follow up with you after this session as part of the recording and as part of that follow-up process, and help kind of navigate some of that, because it can be a little bit tricky to work your way through that. But the short answer is yes. It's a really good question here from Steve. Bit of a tricky one, but it's a good one. It says, many studios express that the vast majority of graduates are not ready for the game industry. research at Northwestern University calls this the gap from a newly graduated student to an entry-level employee. How does GameU address the gap faced by many graduates in the games industry? I mean, from my perspective, it's a little bit about what I talked through at the start about making sure that we're super well aligned to what industry wants and needs. And so that's why we have great people like Adam on the team who've had a lifetime's worth of experience in the industry. So we can really help people understand practically what matters, and also teach the tools and the concepts that we know industry actually want when you start a job. So, and to try and keep on top of those trends because that always changes, right? So if you've got those direct links to industry, the folks who actually work there, they can stay on top of that because it's part of their job. They get it. So I think that's one of the fundamentally important things of the way in which we run GameU to make sure we've got that direct connection because otherwise it's really difficult to close that gap. Adam, anything that I missed there?
I'll add to that too, is that it is, again, the portfolio, your body of work, keeping updated and stuff like that. That's something you work directly with your instructor with, if you say you're at GameU or something like that, right? Where you're showing that you have that actual experience, the knowledge, and you have that body of work behind it to stand behind it.
Yes, no, that makes a lot of sense. Let me see more questions, which is fantastic. Let me see, as someone who's graduated with a capstone project games years ago, how do I find my break in the industry? I've only pushed by as a software developer so far, a career that doesn't offer me enough time to do game dev on the side. Interesting question from Ethan there. Any advice, Adam?
Breaking in. So, and it kind of goes to my journey a little bit because I understand about the time. When I first started, I got hired as a creative writer. I actually wrote the stories and the quests and stuff like that. Some of the last games I worked on, I worked as a software engineer. I did the network code for Mass Effect 3 and stuff like that, right? It was kind of, it's a cheat, right? Learning on the job. Find a job that they have there, they have open that you can do, you have the skills for. Once you're in the door, right, it's a little bit easier. For me, I knew I wanted to be a programmer, but I got a job as a writer because I was very good at writing. I didn't have to spend too much time getting better at it. And then once I was there, especially the AAA studios and stuff like that, usually have mentorship programs where you might have joined at a different level or a different rank or a different job, but they offer mentorship where you can actually train and cross-train to get that job. And that's how I became an engineer there. I started at writing, right? So find something you're passionate about to get your foot in that door.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A very practical question here, but I know there'll be huge variance, but I'm going to ask anyway. Devin is wondering how much do game developers get paid per year? I know that will be a vast spectrum, but any light you can shed on that generally?
It is a vast spectrum. What you're going to have to worry about too is location, right? They're going to pay more in California than they will, and I'm in Ohio currently, right? So if there's a studio out in Ohio, they pay a little bit less, but it has gotten better. It was not as competitive as it was when I was there, but I would say the ranges I have started seeing is somewhere between the 80 to 120, right? And that's for development jobs, right? Engineering, software jobs sometimes pay more, right? But it's usually about the 80,000 range or so is where it's going to start. So,
No, that makes sense. Which I've got to say, obviously, I come from a different corner of the world in terms of my profession. Even though I'm working with a company like GameU, that's not a bad place to start. But again, lots of skills involved, and that makes sense because you've got to have great skills to work there. So no, but that's a good place to start. Sort of a follow-up question from the Minecraft one before. Logan wants to know, can you learn 3D modeling in Minecraft? There's maybe other things you might recommend for that, Adam, but what's your answer?
yeah. So again, Minecraft is more of a 2.5D. It's a forced perspective 3D. Long story short, you can do a lot of good 2D art in Minecraft. 3D modeling, one of the tools that we even actually just start with is something called Tinkercad. So CAD is computer aided design, right? It's made by Autodesk. It makes a whole bunch of computer animation design 3D software. It's called Tinkercad, and it looks like Lego blocks, right? And you take a Lego block, then you could twist and shape the Lego block and make it look like an arm. And so I would actually start with just a 3D program, but again, finding the baseline of a tool, right? Because there's things like Blender and Maya, and these are all industry tools that we do use in the industry. But something like Tinkercad takes away all the crazy, confusing controls and the basics of what you're doing, which is altering a shape, changing the edges, smoothing the edges, the basics for that is something like Tinkercad. You start with like a very novice program and you want to graduate yourself up.
Yep, that makes some sense. I've just realized we are on the hour, guys, but there are a few more questions that are coming through. So we'll keep answering them for a little bit longer. We're happy to stick around and do that because people are really engaged, which is fantastic. So obviously we understand if you allotted that time up to the hour and you need to go and do something, please, we've enjoyed your company. Go and do that. We'll share the recording, but we'll keep going through some of these questions for a little bit more because they're good as well. Interesting question here in the scheme of remote work and the world that we live in now, Adam. What is the best way to work for a game company, but you can't drive very far to get there?
There are a lot of remote positions, right? And these are going to be positions that are a little bit more transient. What I mean by that is that they might be for shorter durations, right? Usually in the long term, if you wanted to be there for a couple of years, they're probably going to want you to be close by. Believe it or not, the story I told about sleeping under my desk, I slept under my desk because at that time I would take the bus and there was no way catching the bus that I was going to make it there, right? But there are online jobs. They're usually smaller or contract work, right? You could look at contracting and stuff like that, and those are usually remote. You'll be given a contract. You have to deliver this by this amount of time, deliverables every week, et cetera, et cetera. But there is remote work out there.
Absolutely. Let me see. Taylor wants to know what's your take on a program like Unity? Can you use Construct to make something like an RPG?
So Unity is great, right? Construct absolutely can make an RPG out of. In fact, I have a couple of students I teach at GameU, and one of them is creating an RPG. So it's absolutely doable, and it's really useful tool. Again, it teaches you the programming, and it's the mechanics behind the scene, that whole event-driven thing. If this, then do this, right? It's teaching you basic programming, but it's teaching you with pictures, right? It's pictographic. Unity is something you want to work yourself up to. It is a great 3D engine. We teach it here at GameU, but you want to make sure that you have a good basis of 3D environments, right? And you want to have a good basis of programming, because programming, Unity supposes programming experience already, and it's just the written hard-coded. It's not the picture-based stuff you get in Construct, right? So you want a little bit of a programming background, excuse me, if you're going to get into Unity.
Yep, that makes sense. You've kind of covered this a bit, but I'm going to read it anyway because I think it's obviously really important with this whole skills development linking to industry, workforce development, all that stuff. So Daniel's got another one just around breaking into the game dev industry. Daniel says that he's been trying that for a while. He's found some temporary work and QA work and has been doing that, but he really wants to obviously find something a little bit more stable and something that kind of meets up with those game dev aspirations a little bit better. We talked about obviously creating portfolios and those sorts of things, making sure you learn your basics and skills, those types of things as well. What else do you recommend? I mean, you talked a little bit about being really engaged in communities and those sorts of things, so you keep putting your name in front of people. Those sorts of things, I suppose, Adam. And anything else? I know you've done lots and all of these things yourself.
Yeah, no, it is. It is getting known in that community, right? The best way for me to answer that one is to, always make yourself known, always work with them. I would, temporary work is something that does happen. That's what I want to actually convey, is that temporary work and temporary as far out as about 2 years to 5 years. That's about that range that you're going to probably stick around anyway. It's not that you can't find it. I found it. I was there for 15 years. But it's really getting to know the people you're working with, really being a perfect fit for them, that you can work on other projects. Rounding out your skill set will also help there. So if there's something else you might be interested in doing, having multiple skill sets that you can offer them. So if they, if it's temporary work, but say, well, we can use them for the art part, but we can also use them for the animating because he's an animating. That might extend it out, right? Look at any kind of learning opportunities while you were there, right? EA and some of the bigger studios have those kind of mentorship and internships and stuff there that you can work on. But I will say it's hard, right? Is that a lot of it is temporary work, right? Because you're building a massive game and they can't sustain that level of employment, unfortunately. So it's part of the industry. You can find it, but it's going to be a niche, and you're going to have to do things like broaden yourself or have a wider skill set in order to maintain yourself longer there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just the distinction there, guys, just because there's temporary work and then there's, I guess, this project-based work. So the project-based work isn't like super short term. It takes a long time, as Adam would know better than probably all of us on this call, to develop a game. So whilst that is temporary per se, it's not, there's still a fair degree of longevity. Longevity. You'll be working on a game for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But as Adam was saying, the cycle tends to go around what games are being developed and where you want to work at, and people kind of rotate through those different studios a little bit. So some of that is definitely a theme of the industry. I think that's probably a little bit hard to escape, would be fair to say, Adam. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay. All right, here's one. Hey, Nick, you've been sitting there patiently on the call for ages after talking about your story. I want to throw this one to you. What is your favorite game out of the indie genre? I might get you to answer that one too, Adam.
Well, I think isn't Five Nights at Freddy's like a type of indie horror game, like how it started? Like, I'm pretty
When it
sure
first
that
started, yeah.
is. Yeah. I would have to say probably Five Nights at Freddy's. I've been a fan of it since day one back in 2014. Watched the FNAF movie last year, day one in the theaters. I've just been like a diehard fan of that. So I'd probably say that's my favorite indie type game.
For me, Terraria, Hollow Knight, some of the basic like platformers and stuff, guys. Really passionate people out there making some really good games.
Yeah. Excellent. Let me see if that's a question about portfolios. In the portfolio, can we use character design, prop, and background design?
100%.
I'm assuming so.
Absolutely, yeah. Organization is going to be a good thing when you got a portfolio. Literally call it out just like you did, right? Here's my rigging, or here's this, or here's that, and have different sections of your portfolio. So if they're looking for a specific skill, they're going to see that word and be like, "Yep, that's what I'm going to look at," right? So.
Yep, that makes sense. Taylor's got a good question here. And I didn't actually know that you started as a creative writer, Adam. So you'll actually be able to answer this one, which I think's anyway. I found that fascinating as a transition point. They're curious to know, how do you become a creative writer in the game industry? I have a cousin who does it, but he sort of fell into it. It's something that I'm really interested in pursuing.
Yep. There is something called a writer's resume, and it's something you can actually look up. So a writer's resume is a body of work. And usually when they post a job for a creative writing position, they're going to give you a couple of different kind of genres or a couple of key points to actually write about. And you're going to build something what's called the writer resume. And you want to have that body of work, but usually you also want to customize it. So just like we put like a cover letter on a resume, right? You want to actually take what they're asking for, take maybe something you've worked on before, and then apply it the direction they want, the genre they're looking for, the feel or the mood or something like that, right? But you want to, when you're applying, you want to customize it to what you know they're looking for, right? That way, they're going to read it. They're going to start to read it. They're going to get through maybe a paragraph, right? If you haven't keyed into what they're looking for in that first paragraph, right, you've probably lost that. And it's an unfortunate thing is they're going to have a lot of resumes on their desks. If you can't hit them in that first paragraph, right, bring out your stops, bring out the best stuff in that first paragraph. If you can't hit them in that first paragraph, probably you're going to miss out. So.
Yep, that makes sense. All right, I think we've got through most of the questions, and there's just another quick one about will the workshop be posted on the Autism Entertainment site? That's the last question I've got here, and it might be a good way to me actually hand back over to Judy as well.
Just wanted to mention that today is the premiere of Carl the Collector, which is an animated series on PBS featuring an autistic raccoon. And we're excited about that because the staff has a lot of neurodivergent folk on it, and it stars two 10-year-old autistic kids. So that's really cool. And the staff from Carl the Collector are going to be on a webinar with Autism and Entertainment on January 30th. So again, thank you all for being here, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Goodbye.